If you only think about them on the weekends and the weekdays, in the mornings and the evenings, when you wake up and when you sleep in, it's safe to say that you're obsessing. I am here to help you. Welcome back. My name is Mallory Grimsey, and if you're new here, I'm a mental health therapist that specializes in helping teenagers through all sorts of challenges. And in this video, I'm going to be tackling that ultimate challenge of when you want to stop obsessing over them. You know who they are. But first, let's talk a little bit about what is healthy and unhealthy when it comes to thinking about somebody. When you really care about somebody, whether it is their opinion, their impression, the relationship status, whatever it is, it makes sense that you're going to think about them. And especially when they are new and you're curious and you're interested in learning more about the dynamic, or perhaps you are confused, you're going to think about it more than usual. That's okay. And that is normal. You should think about the people that you care about and that you love. You should stay curious about people's relationships and dynamics that are a little confusing, that you're trying to learn more about yourself or them. I'm okay with that. It's when it turns into obsession that's where it can get a little problematic. So what is obsession? It's really when your thoughts become all-consuming and it starts to interfere with your day-to-day life or the decisions that you make. You can find yourself starting to lose your identity. Maybe you're having trouble completing your homework because you just can't turn off your thoughts. You can't focus on what needs to get done. You start to let go of your own self-care routines, whether that is making sure that you take a shower every day or you brush your teeth. It could be that you find yourself being more irritable or angry with others when you're not allowed or able to think about them or talk about them in a way that you can't talk about other things without bringing them up or relating whatever it is that you're talking to them as well. You might not even be able to get the sleep that you need because you just cannot stop thinking and obsessing over them. It can also cause overwhelming feelings of anxiety or stress or even a sad or depressed mood, especially if these obsessive thoughts are around that loved one's safety. Or perhaps it's about comparing what you think you need to be or who they think you are to who you actually are. It can actually lead to feelings of insecurity and depression and feeling inferior to other people, whether it is that person that you're obsessing about or somebody in their orbit. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. This isn't the secret, but another secret. Those thoughts about feeling inferior or not good enough are probably not true, but we will save that for another video. If that's a topic that you'd want a deeper dive on, let me know by typing "I am good enough" in the comments. That'll give me the signal to go ahead and add that to the list. So as a mental health therapist, part of my job is to notice patterns of behavior and what could be potentially contributing or sourcing the stress of the problems that are occurring for you. So if you are noticing any of these signs that are popping up that are making obsessing about somebody a struggle, most of the time it's related to feelings of insecurity. Now, I know that can feel like a really scary word, or you might be feeling like,
but I'm confident, I do feel good about myself.
That can absolutely be true. It might be insecurity in relation to this particular person or this particular situation. Usually when it comes to our experiences, it's not one size fits all, and it definitely isn't a like all or nothing sort of a thing. You can have pockets of security and pockets of insecurity. I myself have this that happens for my own life, and I'm a professional. So it makes sense that everybody could experience these little pockets that pop up from time to time. So when I'm talking about insecurity, I'm really talking about attachment styles. So as a mental health therapist, when we talk about attachment and attachment styles, many of us were trained in the old style of thinking of your attachment style was pretty much like set or formed at a young age. I'm talking like infancy to toddler age. And that comes from John Bowlby, who is an attachment researcher. And Bowlby's research is probably the most cited or most known amongst many people because of the way he breaks it down. So what they found is they broke attachment styles into 4 different styles. You have an anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, anxious avoidant attachment, and secure attachment. And they broke these down by observing how young children, usually like toddler age, interacted with their parents or their primary caregiver. And so what they found is that somebody who had an anxious attachment style, when the primary caregiver left the room, they would do a lot of kind of like checking and seeing were they still there, and they might become a little distressed. They might cry, they might try to like regulate or soothe themselves, and then when the caregiver came back into the room, they would often, you know, play a little bit, but constantly like check, like, are you there? They might like touch their parent to make sure that they were still there or sit right close nearby them. They were worried that their caregiver was not going to return. If they were out of sight, they were worried that they may never come back into sight. Now, in avoidant attachment, they would have a similar response, but a little bit different. So when their caregiver returned, they would become so overwhelmed by the thought that they might leave again that they would kind of act like it didn't bother them. So they may not even acknowledge that their parent or caregiver re-entered the room. Or if their caregiver tried to give them a hug or something, they would withhold affection because it just felt too intolerable to consider that their caregiver would ever leave them like that, and that it was protecting against that vulnerability or that hurt. Anxious avoidant was kind of a mix of both, like very, very dysregulated, a lot of touch and go. It's difficult to kind of know what you're going to get with somebody with an anxious avoidant style because they're just trying to do the best they can. And so they're just trying to like almost kind of like throw spaghetti at the wall. They're just trying to see what works and what sticks. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Now, a securely attached child would be somebody that whether their caregiver was in the room or not in the room, even if they did become a little dysregulated, because the thing is that it's stressful. Nothing's stress-free. I wish we were there, but it's just not true. So it's still stressful. They may become a little dysregulated. Maybe they cry a little bit. Maybe, you know, they do a little checking, but ultimately they're quicker to re-regulate and regroup and be able to enjoy their time, whether they are playing with their caregiver in the room or without the caregiver in the room. They inherently know and trust that that caregiver is going to return. Now, this can play out throughout your lifespan as you develop friendships, working relationships, therapeutic relationships. If you're working with a therapist, we do a lot of relational work and attachment work. We don't always directly call it that, but we do. And even more importantly, in romantic relationships. That was kind of the old school way of thinking, and that still applies, but that was kind of the idea that your attachment style was formed and fixed throughout your life. Newer research has actually found that your attachment style may actually change or adapt based on your relationship and the other people's attachment style within that relationship dynamic. So somebody who has an anxious attachment style may be in a relationship with somebody who has an avoidant attachment style. And so when the person with the anxious attachment style starts to feel insecure or curious or worried about the stability or safety of that relationship, they may do a little extra checking to ease their anxiety. And as they're doing that checking, that might be feeling too emotionally intense or overwhelming for the avoidant person. Not that they don't want to have that intimate relationship with you, but they might actually need to kind of safeguard their energy by pulling away and retreating a little bit, which can incite more anxiety in somebody with an anxious attachment style. This is usually where obsessing or obsessiveness comes in. The great thing about this, and this is the secret, is that you can create security by focusing on creating a secure base within yourself and within your relationship that you find yourself obsessing over. Okay, so how do you create a secure base within yourself and within this relationship dynamic so that you can stop obsessing over this person? Because the truth is that when you're obsessing over somebody, you're really just trying to gain control over the uncontrollable. We cannot control other people's thoughts. We cannot control their feelings. We cannot control their responses. We can potentially impact them, but we cannot control it. And so when we feel out of control, we try to create control when and where we can, often with our own responses, with our own feelings, with our own thought patterns, which is where obsessing can come in. Because if we just keep thinking about it and trying to problem solve, that gives us a little bit of a focus and distraction from the real heart of the issue, which is this feeling of instability or insecurity within yourself or within the relationship. So how do you create a secure base within yourself and within the relationship? I am so glad you asked. Let's talk about it. So the very first thing that you need to do is you need to identify your values. If you don't know what is important to you, what your interests are, what you're trying to work towards for yourself, for your community, for your relationship, it's gonna be hard to know what direction to move in. So some ways that you can identify your values are to think about what sort of hobbies or interests or ventures do you enjoy? What did you like to play when you were a young child? Tap into some of that creativity that is inherent in all of us. And I don't want to hear, I'm not a creative person. I used to think that too, actually. And the thing is that creativity can live in a variety of different ways that we don't necessarily always think of. It doesn't mean that you are an A++ art student. I am not. It just means that you are able to think or experience things in new and different ways, which we are all capable of. Even you. If you're having trouble identifying this for yourself, I highly recommend that you sign up for free access to the Self-Care Bundle. It's a curated library of resources that I created for you. And one of those resources is actually a really great video and workbook that shows me guiding you through some journal prompts to help you reflect and engage this side of your thinking and notice these things so that you can start to create a life that you enjoy. Okay, so once you have identified your values, it's going to make it easier to guide your decision making moving forward. If you start feeling like unsteady or unsure, always go back to what is the outcome that I want and why do I want this and how will that align with my values. Once you have that in place, you've got to communicate. People are not mind readers or mood readers. They shouldn't be and you shouldn't be. And so communication is key. Clear is kind, direct is kind. You need to be able to tell other people what it is that you need to feel more secure in that dynamic. Now, this may be directly communicating with that person and letting them know and allowing yourself the courage to be a little vulnerable and share with them.
Like, hey, I know that this is my thing, but when I don't receive a text from you before you go to bed, it makes me really worried that you've forgotten about me. Do you mind just sending me a goodnight text?
Asking for what you need will help you get what you want. Or it will show you that that person is just not interested or able to give you what you need. And then you may have to assess or reassess is this relationship working for you? It can be totally painful. It can be really exhausting to put in this effort and work up front, but the payoff will definitely be worth it. And it may actually save you some time and energy and heartache in the long run. So don't give up. Make sure to give it some time and see, is this working or is this not working? Perhaps you may decide that you need to change the dynamic or the relationship in order to make it work. And that's where setting boundaries and communicating those boundaries and limits is going to be really important. If you're somebody who would really love a good night text from the person that you're interested in and they can't do that or won't do that for some reason, you might need to limit your social media access with them so that you're not constantly being barraged by their updates or their status that they say that they can't send me a goodnight text, but I see they're posting live stories right now and that hurts. Perhaps taking a social media break either from their profile in particular or as a whole could be useful and helpful here. Now, while you are in that assessing phase, it's really important to use your coping skills. Y'all know I love coping skills. Hit that like button if you love them too. Coping skills don't necessarily solve the problem, but they help you hang in there through the discomfort of the intensity of the problematic experience, which while you're in an assessment phase of this obsessing and trying to stop obsessing can be really exhausting, right? It can be really anxiety provoking. It can incite all sorts of moods, whether it is anger, frustration, anxiety, sadness, whatever it is. I think we can agree it's not working and it feels really uncomfortable. So using some coping strategies to either distract yourself from those obsessive thoughts or perhaps to soothe your nervous system, your physical responses to that stress. Maybe it's shifting your mindset by improving the moment, or you might need some crisis survival skills. I go through each and all of these in the coping skills crash course way more in depth. So if you want to deep dive, definitely check that out. One of the things that I know really drives obsessive thinking though is separation anxiety. If the thought of being not with the person that you're obsessing over, or the thought of feeling separated from them, either emotionally, physically, relationally, definitely check out this video over here. It's all about how to control your separation anxiety. Thanks for watching.